This is the plaintiff, Mary Batternick. She says she lived in the defendant's rental property and made numerous improvements the defendant claimed he would reimburse her for, but didn't. She eventually moved out because the defendant accused her of stealing. Bottom line, she wants the money she was promised, is suing for the $4,009.21 she's owed, and expects the judge to award it to her today. This is the defendant, James Batternick. He says the plaintiff is family, and he did her and her husband a big favor by letting them live in his house rent-free. Now she's suing him here in court? Please. In fact, if you wanted to get technical, the plaintiff owes him $4,000 in back rent. But he refuses to sue family in court. He's just written it off as one of those things. And so should the plaintiff. He's accused of failing a family member.
All parties, please use your right hand. Be seated. Come to order, please. Litigants have been sworn, Your Honor.
Thank you, Douglas.
Welcome,
Mary Batternick?
Yes.
And Benjamin Batternick, who you have power of attorney for, you are suing James Batternick for $4,009.21 that you say he owes you for work that you did in a place he owns. Tell me what's going on.
Well, last year in July, we got a notice from a home we were renting that they were going to be selling it. We have 3 dogs, and it's very difficult to find a rental home with that many pets. So Jim is my husband's uncle, and
Why isn't your husband here, his nephew?
He's in Florida, and the original suit was just me and Jim. I didn't really want to involve Ben because I didn't know how it was going to turn out.
Okay, go ahead.
So I told my husband, I said, call Uncle Jimmy, see what he's got going on. He owns several properties. So we did, and everything was fine. He said, yeah, I have some property. We made arrangements to come up and see it. It was actually one that he was living in. So we went, we saw it, needed a lot of work, but it's a great house. It has potential.
So did you move into the house he was living in?
He had a room there, yes.
So
And we
you
allowed
guys-
him to keep the room because he traveled with
You allowed
business.
him to keep the room. He owns it. What do you mean?
Yes. Well, we moved in with the intentions of
understanding
renting
that
it, and he also mentioned he was looking to sell it. So
Okay.
that was in the back of our minds.
So you moved in, and how much were you supposed to be paying him rent?
When we originally went, he said, how much can you afford? I said, no more than $1,700 a month. Now, this
Okay.
is before I saw the property. I saw the property. There's many things that need to be done. There's absolutely no way I'm going to pay $1,700.
Did you say that to him?
We didn't really discuss the amount of money.
Okay, but when you move in, what's your understanding of what rent is? Like, people don't move in without an understanding.
When we made the original arrangement, we were going to move in. We were going to do the improvements. I was going to help him get rid of some tenants that were there living in the efficiency. And we would discuss the actual rent amount.
So according to you,
later.
your rent is zero until
Yes,
further discussion?
because we were going to be
and
doing the work
according to
on
you,
the
was
home.
their rent zero?
The rent was always understood to be $1,700, and they've never actually paid any rent. They just paid a $1,700 move-in first month. Other than that, no rent was
Okay,
ever
so there
paid.
was $1,700 paid originally.
Yes, to
Okay,
move in. I would
that
not let
strikes
them.
me as people who understand they're paying $1,700 a month. All right, so there's $1,700 paid originally, and then what?
Well, first of all, we're family, and I think there's a lot more tolerance and leniency that one would do with family. And it became known to me that my nephew was unemployed and had some, hard times, and I'm understanding of that. And it was presented to me after they moved in and after we agreed to the $1,700. I'm not the type of person that would throw out family because of that situation. I'm understanding. They presented to me the fact that they had financial difficulties and they could not afford the $1,700, and they basically gave me an ultimatum that they were only going to pay $1,000. It put me in a very awkward situation because this is family, and economic times are difficult, and I have helped other
Did they pay the
families.
$1,000?
They never paid.
They never paid another
never
penny?
Paid another penny.
Okay, so how long did they live there?
I believe on 6 February,
And they moved
were
in
gone.
The
when?
end of August 31st.
All right, now, what is your understanding of your obligation when you're living there from August 31st through February 6th to pay rent? They're giving you, he's giving you a place to live, and you're giving him what?
The work.
Okay, Then why are you here suing for the amount of money that you feel the work is worth when you know you didn't pay rent?
Well, I'm not suing for labor. I'm suing for the materials. I'm suing for the ceiling fans that he asked me to buy and said he would pay for. I'm suing for security deposits that I gave other tenants of his. I helped do some managing of another property.
So what work did you do there?
We redid the living room, we redid the floors, we did faux finish on the ceiling, we cleaned it, we removed the furniture. It was a mess. It's still a mess. It's,
So you didn't finish cleaning it up?
no.
Okay, so
We
you
cleaned
put in
it
new
enough
floors.
so that we could live in it and be
You put it. Tell me
somewhat
exactly
comfortable.
what you did, because here's what you're suing for. You want 5 ceiling fans that you paid for, correct?
That he asked us to buy, and I have text messages stating he would pay us for them.
Okay, may I see those text messages? You want $479 in paint and brushes.
It's also cleaning supplies, stuff that we needed. My husband it's a very old house.
Did you agree to pay back the ceiling fan costs?
It was presented to me that Ben worked at a place where they would have factory rejects, and he was able to get them at either no cost or very little cost, and that they agreed to furnish them and
There's
not
no
to worry
price
about
here. Just a second. There's no price here on the ceiling fans. It's completely missing a price.
The other sheet has what we paid, and the text message I'm going to show you has the price.
There is nothing connecting these two items. Let me see the text. Have you talked to your nephew?
Not lately. There's been some disagreements and some unacceptable verbiage.
So this basically destroyed your relationship with your nephew?
Well, I believe time is a healer of all things, and I think everybody needs to cool down. And in a year or two, we could probably say, oh, well, we really kind of went off on the deep end and did some things that weren't socially acceptable. And I think, family would stick together. That's my
Well,
understanding.
I hope you're right. Did you find that text? Because I have to kind of move on
I'm
here.
sorry.
That's
I
right.
do have it. It's just,
Okay, let's move on.
Sorry.
According to you, you also want $119.95 for floor sanding. What's that about? Did you rent equipment?
we rented floor sanders.
Okay. And then you want half of the electrician bill. Why half? Like, what's going on with that?
Well, we talked about the can lighting, and
Did he agree to pay half that
Yes,
bill?
he agreed to pay
So
$500.
you're also suing for the security deposit for ex-tenants. Tell me about that.
he had another property in Long Beach, and I did the paperwork and gave them a 60-day notice, did the walkout with them, and gave them a check because he was out of town on work. And he was supposed to pay me back the
What's the story with that?
$393.
Mary is very bullheaded and does what she wants to do, and she takes charge, which quite often is a very good attribute for one to have. But when they do that without getting concurrence of somebody else's house, they're exceeding their authority, and she has unilaterally taken upon herself to do all these things without checking with me.
But you're living there, so you see that they're being done,
Well,
right?
I've been on travel quite a bit, and with strained relationships, I've actually left the home to avoid conflict, and I moved into a hotel for a couple of weeks just to avoid, because I knew they were leaving, and I didn't want it to escalate, and so I just left the premise so they could cool down, and it would be over.
Okay. All right, so that's your global
Yes.
rebuttal. As far as the floor sanding, the electrician bill, the improvements to the place,
Yes.
What is your rebuttal?
They took it upon themselves to do certain things. They said, you'll be happy with what we're doing.
But what was the idea, that they were going to do that in lieu of the rent?
They weren't paying rent, and we were going to get together, hopefully at the end of every month, and go through these things. They didn't provide any receipts until they were ready to move
But what
out.
was the idea? At the end of the month, let's say things worked the way they should have. At the end of the month, what would happen? You would see if they did $1,700 worth of work?
Or I would deduct that, if I reviewed what they did and I agreed with it, I would deduct that from the rent, and then they would make the balance of the rent payment.
Okay, all right. So let's discuss the ex-tenant's security deposit. Talk to me about that.
The house I have is a large house, and we have maid's quarters, and I have some other relatives that are visiting or staying with me as well. Mary and Ben decided they did not want anybody else in the house. I would be permitted to stay there, even though I own the house, but they didn't want other people in the house. And I'm like, well, what are you proposing? And they said, I'll take care of it. I'll give them a termination. I'll, force them to move out and basically do an eviction.
Were those people relatives?
Some are family members of a domestic partner.
Okay, were these people paying rent?
Yes.
So why? But did you want them to leave? They're paying you rent, right?
Yes.
Okay, so why would you want them to leave?
Well, the long-term plan, Ben and Mary indicated they would be interested in buying the house from me.
Ah.
And with that long-term plan, these were milestones to get to that long-term plan. Now, this is family, so we didn't methodically.
There's no contract.
No contract. It's all verbal understanding. And if it fell through, it was not, from my perspective, it was not a problem. We're family. The short-term goals, everybody having a place to live, everybody having food to eat, everybody being happy was being.
How'd that work out?
Well, Mary moved out. Family living with family sometimes causes issues. They decided to move out on their own.
I'm just curious, Ms. Betternick, how it is that you feel that based on $8,500 in rent that you never paid, he has to still pay you $4,009.21.
Welcome back to the People's Court. Harvey Levin here. So, you have a nephew. Nephew totally disrespects you, even with money. Is it appropriate to end the relationship?
Well, it depends.
Would you ever end the relationship over somebody who just doesn't respect you? And it's a relative.
Absolutely, because business is business.
Fair enough. But what about respect? Just if it's an issue of respect, would you ever end it if he just doesn't respect you?
I think I'd give him the chance, but there would be tough love involved where...
Would there be a point where you would cut him off?
Absolutely.
Interesting.
I agree also. I would end the relationship if it was a excellent amount of respect.
Fair enough. Going inside the courtroom.
I did the math, and you could tell me till the cows come home that that was before I saw the place that I agreed to exactly $1,700 without seeing. I mean, you see the place, and if $1,700 wasn't going to cut it, something else had to come up. And according to you, well, nothing came up. We just lived there. September, October, November, December, January, February. Everybody else has to pay rent, and you didn't. So if he's allowing it to happen and you're doing it, why isn't this instead of rent? Why would you be entitled to a penny? And you come in here, and this is family who this is happening with. I know why your husband isn't here. He shouldn't be here, and neither should you. My verdict in this case is for the defendant.
So the defendant prevails in this case. The plaintiff, Mary Batternick, has just come out of the courtroom. You're smiling, but are you really happy?
I'm stunned
Why?
because I have the text messages, but I guess she didn't want to see them.
No, she couldn't wait forever for you to
Yeah.
get it up. And that wasn't the
couldn't.
only issue here. The real issue is you didn't pay any rent for 6 months.
No, we
And you're
didn't.
suing him for $4,000. The judge said it doesn't make sense and really kicked you out of the courtroom.
I don't feel she kicked me
Well,
out,
yeah,
but
you were
yeah.
ejected, let's face it.
Okay.
Thank you very much. You must sign
Thank
some
you.
documents, please. Now, here comes the defendant. You're a really family-minded individual, no question about that. How do you feel about the outcome here?
Well, I think it's a little unfortunate that we had a disagreement.
No question.
And communications are definitely 90% of the problems in the world, and
Yep.
and we're all people that have communication problems. I think through the court we were able to do that communication.
All right. Good luck.
Thank you.
very
Thank
much.
you very much.
Harvey?
Doug, I got to say, this is common sense. The plaintiff paid no rent, so the labor and materials, their contribution, plaintiff doesn't get the money. It makes no sense. And that will do it for this case. Litigants for the next case on the way into the courtroom right now.